Our first compilation of extremely rich black NBA players who live like poor got over 1 million views, so we're here with part 2 for you. Because this chapter of black NBA, wealth and radical humility is far from closed. For every player popping bottles in a Vegas nightclub, there is another one arguing with a cashier over a $2 coupon, and he has $300 million sitting in a brokerage account. These are not accidents or PR stunts. This is a different kind of championship mindset, one that plays out not on a hardwood floor, but on a balance sheet. Welcome back to Black Status, and today, we're looking at the 10 more extremely rich black NBA players who famously live like they are poor. Number 10. Dwyane Wade, the man who fired his younger self. Here is something most people don't know about Dwyane Wade. He will be the first one to tell you that the young version of himself was terrible with money. Not careless, terrible. Wade came into the league in 2003 as a first-round pick out of Marquette, and like most 21-year-olds handed a multi-million-dollar contract, he celebrated accordingly. The cars piled up, the jewelry came out, the entourage expanded. Wade was living the full cinematic version of NBA stardom, and for a while, it felt great. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. In a candid 2026 interview, Wade admitted openly that the older version of himself is much wiser and more frugal than the flashy guard who used to collect cars the way other people collect sneakers. The turning point wasn't a financial crisis or a bad investment. It was simply maturity. Wade looked at his garage full of depreciating machines and asked himself a very simple question: why? He began trimming deliberately, not out of necessity, but out of philosophy. He started keeping only the vehicles he genuinely loved and letting go of the rest. He became intentional, a word he uses repeatedly when discussing finances, about every major purchase. Instead of buying things to signal status, he started asking whether the purchase had actual utility in his life. Today, Wade channels his energy into businesses that generate rather than consume wealth. His wine label, his stake in emerging brands, his mentorship of younger athletes through financial literacy conversations. He has become, in many ways, the cautionary tale who rewrote his own ending. Dwyane Wade didn't start out frugal. He earned that discipline the hard way, by being the opposite first. And that makes his story arguably the most honest one on this entire list. Number 9. Damian Lillard, the quiet billionaire next door. If you passed Damian Lillard on the street in Portland, Oregon during his early years with the Trailblazers, you might have thought he was a college student running late to class. No entourage, no diamond-encrusted watch. Just a guy moving through the city like he had somewhere to be and zero interest in being noticed. For a player who would go on to earn over $365 million in NBA salary alone, that kind of invisibility was a choice, and a powerful one. Lillard grew up in Oakland, California, in a neighborhood that didn't reward carelessness with money. That background installed in him a very specific kind of radar, the kind that immediately detects waste and recoils from it. Early in his career, teammates noted that Dame was still shopping at discount stores, still clocking economy-class flights, still treating luxury like it was a foreign language he had no interest in learning. What makes Lillard's frugality unique is that it isn't rooted in fear. It's rooted in priorities. He doesn't skip luxury because he's traumatized by poverty. He skips it because his money has better places to be. He has invested in esports through Guild Esports, runs a music and tech label, and quietly donates through his Respect charity fund, with a consistency that never makes headlines because he doesn't need it to. He owns a farmhouse in Oregon worth a fraction of what his peers spend on watch collections. Damian Lillard is the guy who made $400 million and somehow managed to make it look like a calm Tuesday. He is proof that the loudest players in the league are not always the richest, and that the richest are often the ones you never hear coming. Number 8. Draymond Green, the financial coach who practices what he preaches. Draymond Green has an opinion about everything. Anyone who has watched 5 minutes of his podcast or caught a post-game interview knows this. But here is the thing about Draymond. When it comes to money, his opinions aren't just loud, they are backed by lived behavior. And in a league where financial advice is easy to give and impossible to follow, that distinction matters enormously. Green has made it his unofficial mission to drag his fellow players toward financial sanity, whether they asked for it or not. He publicly called out teammates about tax planning. He advised younger players in the league to start investing early and aggressively rather than waiting until after their playing days to think about wealth preservation. He once urged Kyrie Irving, in a very Draymond way, to get his financial house in order. The man simply cannot help himself. He sees financial recklessness the same way he sees a bad defensive rotation, as something that must be corrected immediately. But here is what separates Draymond from a hypocrite. He actually lives it. Despite earning nearly $228 million in NBA salary, Green was known earlier in his career for driving practical, unremarkable vehicles. Reportedly a used Prius at one point, which in the Bay Area tech scene barely turns a head, but in an NBA parking lot is practically an act of rebellion. He lived in a converted warehouse loft in Oakland rather than a sprawling Silicon Valley estate. He co-founded ARK Capital, a venture fund that invests in technology. He built a clothing brand. He is constructing a media empire with his podcast network. Draymond Green didn't just talk about building generational wealth, he blueprinted it. The man who is loudest on the court turns out to be one of the quietest spenders in the building. Number 7. Luol Deng, the invisible billionaire. Ask a casual NBA fan to name the wealthiest former player in the league's recent history, and they will probably say LeBron, KD, or Kobe. Almost nobody says Luol Deng. And that, right there, is the entire point. Deng is arguably the greatest financial success story in the history of professional basketball. A man who earned a modest $166 million in NBA salary and somehow converted it into an estimated $200 million net worth through sheer discipline and strategic invisibility. Deng was born in South Sudan, raised in London on a council estate, and entered the NBA as a Chicago Bulls forward who was known for defense, intelligence, and staying out of trouble. He was never the loudest player in the room. He was never the most flamboyant. He simply showed up, did his job, and quietly studied the financial landscape around him with the focus of someone who understood that basketball was a means to an end, not the destination itself. While still actively playing, Deng founded D3N9 Capital, a real estate investment firm that now controls a portfolio worth over $125 million. Hotels, condominiums, apartment complexes spread across multiple countries. He didn't wait for retirement to build his empire. He built it in parallel, signing off on property deals between games. Today, Deng splits his time between London and Miami, living in a manner that would surprise anyone who knew his net worth. No mega mansion, no yacht, no fleet of supercars in the driveway. Just a man who turned a council estate upbringing into a global real estate empire, quietly and without applause. Luol Deng is what financial mastery looks like when it has nothing to prove. Number 6. Stephen Curry, the MVP in the minivan lane. Stephen Curry is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most marketable human beings on planet Earth. He has revolutionized basketball, shattered records that people thought were untouchable, and built a brand that extends from the NBA court to Silicon Valley boardrooms to golf courses around the world. His career earnings alone have crossed $470 million. And on a random Tuesday in the Bay Area, there is a reasonable chance you will spot him driving a Toyota Highlander. Not a Lamborghini, not a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a Toyota Highlander, the official vehicle of suburban soccer parents and pragmatic commuters everywhere. This is a man with access to any car on the planet, and he consistently gravitates toward functional, sensible transportation. It speaks volumes about how he is wired internally, even as his external world explodes with wealth and fame. Curry's financial modesty runs deeper than his car choice, though. He was an early investor in Beyond Meat back when plant-based food was still considered a fringe concept. He backed fintech startups and poured serious capital into health and wellness ventures through his athlete recovery lab. He treats his off-court portfolio with the same precision and attention he gives to his shooting form. Methodical, disciplined, and built for the long game. What makes Curry unique on this list is that his frugality is almost invisible to the public because he is so universally beloved. Nobody is writing shock headlines about Steph driving a Highlander, because it fits so perfectly with his image. He is the family man, the church kid from Charlotte, the guy who made the logo shot famous, while somehow managing to remain the most approachable superstar in the sport. Stephen Curry is proof that you can be the face of a billion-dollar industry and still be the most normal person in the parking lot. Number 5. Tim Duncan, the chef who never needed a chef. We introduced Tim Duncan in Part 1 as the patron saint of boring wealth, and the man has done absolutely nothing since to change that designation. But there are layers to Duncan's frugality that deserve their own chapter, because while the flannel shirts and the Oldsmobile told one part of the story, the full picture is even more remarkable. Consider this: Tim Duncan, a man with nearly $244 million in career earnings, cooks most of his own meals. Not because he has a passion for cooking in the trendy, celebrity chef sense. He is not posting grilling videos for clout on Instagram. He does it because paying someone else to perform a basic human function when you are perfectly capable of doing it yourself strikes him as illogical. He grills his own steaks. He prepares his own meals. He moves through domestic life like a person who has not forgotten how to be a person. He shunned the personal chef culture that permeates the NBA like a default setting. He shunned the entourage. He shunned social media completely, which in the era of personal branding is practically a revolutionary act. Duncan gave 0 interviews he didn't have to give, and attended 0 events he wasn't obligated to attend. His off-court life was aggressively, almost stubbornly, ordinary. His philanthropy, however, was anything but quiet. He donated over $1.5 million to the San Antonio YMCA. He built programs for underserved youth that still operate today. He gave back with the same absence of drama that defined everything else about him. Tim Duncan spent 2 decades as the best power forward in NBA history, and somehow managed to do it while being completely unbothered by the machinery of fame. The man just wanted to grill his steak, fix his cars, and go home. And in the history of professional sports, that level of self-possession is rarer than any championship ring. Number 4. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the kid who never forgot. Giannis Antetokounmpo has earned over $338 million in NBA salary. He is a 2-time MVP, a champion, and one of the most dominant physical forces the sport has ever seen. He is also, by all available evidence, still the same kid who used to sell DVDs on the streets of Athens to help his family survive. And not in a metaphorical, motivational poster sense, in a very literal, daily behavior sense. The stories from his early career are well documented at this point. The Western Union transfers that left him without cab fare. The shared sneakers with his brothers. The genuine, unperformed shock at receiving any gift or perk for free. But what is less discussed is how those habits have persisted even as the zeros in his bank account have multiplied beyond comprehension. New details paint an even more vivid picture. Giannis drove a second-hand Kia well into his NBA career. Not as a statement, but simply because it got him where he needed to go. He reportedly turned down a 6-figure endorsement deal that conflicted with his family's values, choosing integrity over income at a moment when most people would have signed without blinking. He wears basic gear, calls his family for financial advice even now, and approaches wealth with the permanent suspicion of someone who knows that it can disappear. He has invested in a Greek gin distillery and a clothing line called The Deer, channeling his platform into businesses that connect back to his roots. He pours money into his family and his foundation. But the miracle of Giannis Antetokounmpo is not just what he does with his money. It is what he refuses to let his money do to him. He earned the lifestyle of a king and chose the habits of a man who has not forgotten what the other side looks like. Number 3. Jimmy Butler, still grinding at 35. Jimmy Butler has earned over $366 million playing basketball. He has been to the NBA Finals. He has built a coffee brand that started in a hotel room and turned into a cultural moment. He has endorsement deals, real estate, and a name that carries weight in every locker room in the league. And he still moves like he's one bad contract away from sleeping on a stranger's couch. That is not a criticism. That is a superpower. The minivan is still part of the legend. But what gets lost in the minivan conversation is the deeper psychology behind it. Butler grew up without consistent parental support, bounced between households, and entered adulthood with zero safety net and zero guarantees. That kind of beginning does not produce a man who takes financial security for granted. It produces a man who guards it like a starting position, aggressively, personally, and with extreme prejudice toward waste. Big Face Coffee, which he launched in the 2020 NBA bubble by charging fellow millionaires $20 a cup out of his hotel room, was not just a hustle, it was a diagnostic test for his own psyche. He didn't need $20. He needed to know that the grind still lived in him, that wealth hadn't softened the competitive edge that got him there in the first place. He passed his own test with flying colors. Now with the Charlotte Hornets, Butler carries the same energy. He invests in tech startups. He runs his Butlers for Braves Foundation. He avoids the jewelry and the fleet of supercars that his income could easily support. Jimmy Butler's entire life is a message to anyone willing to read it. The hustle that got you here is the same hustle that keeps you here. Never confuse a big bank account with permission to stop being hungry. Number 2. LeBron James, a billionaire and his budget. Let us revisit the king, because in the time since Part 1, the LeBron James financial story has only gotten more extraordinary, and frankly, more entertaining. As of 2025, Forbes officially certified LeBron James as the first active NBA player to achieve billionaire status. $1 billion. Not in career earnings, in actual, certified, verified net worth. The man is a walking financial institution, and he still will not pay for Pandora Premium. We have to dwell on this for a moment. LeBron James owns equity in the Boston Red Sox and Liverpool Football Club through Fenway Sports Group. He built the Spring Hill Company into a media powerhouse. He owns pizza franchises. He has a lifetime Nike deal that will pay him and his estate long after he stops playing basketball. His real estate portfolio alone, properties in Brentwood, Beverly Hills, and beyond, is valued at roughly $80 million. And somewhere in a weight room, the man is sitting through a 30-second advertisement for a music streaming service because he refuses to spend $5 a month. Dwyane Wade has confirmed this publicly, with the specific detail and the specific resignation of a man who has tried and failed to explain it to his best friend. LeBron's response, delivered without apology, was simple. He is not buying any app subscriptions. Full stop. Then there is the Wi-Fi situation. LeBron James travels internationally for games, promotional events, and global business. A man of his stature could have a dedicated satellite connection, a personal IT team, a solution of any kind. Instead, he turns off data roaming and walks around foreign cities hunting for a free Wi-Fi signal. Gabrielle Union has joked about it. His teammates have joked about it. LeBron himself has acknowledged it with the quiet pride of a man who knows exactly what he is doing. The lesson buried inside the joke is this. LeBron James became a billionaire not in spite of caring about $5, but in part because of it. He treats every denomination of money with identical respect. He donates tens of millions to charity. He built a school for at-risk kids in Akron. He spends where it creates legacy, and he saves where the world expects him to be careless. That discipline, compounded over 2 decades, is not a personality quirk. It is the architecture of a billion-dollar empire built one refused app subscription at a time. Number 1. Kevin Durant, the ghost of Uncle Paul. Kevin Durant has earned over $500 million in NBA salary. Let that number sit for a moment. $500 million. He is the highest-paid player on this entire list by career earnings, and one of the highest-paid athletes in the history of professional sports. By every metric of financial abundance, Kevin Durant has won the game before most people even understood the rules. But there is a version of Kevin Durant that existed before the mansions in Los Angeles and the tech investments and the global brand. A version that his old teammates from Oklahoma City knew simply as Uncle Paul. The nickname came from a very specific behavioral pattern. Durant, during his early years with the Thunder, used to move through daily life with the energy and spending habits of a frugal retired uncle. He drove a modest car long past the point where his teammates thought it was funny. He ate simple food. He kept a low profile in a city that would have celebrated him at every restaurant, club, and event if he'd let it. The Uncle Paul years were formative in a way that Durant himself has acknowledged. The discipline of those early seasons, The years of living below his means in Oklahoma City while his salary climbed created the financial foundation for everything that came after. Because when the big endorsement money arrived, and when the tech investment opportunities began presenting themselves, Durant already had capital that hadn't been eaten by a lifestyle. Today, Kevin Durant's portfolio reads like a Silicon Valley dream deck. He has backed Post, Coinbase, and multiple high-growth startups through his investment vehicles. He has built a media company. He has extended his brand globally in ways that will generate income long after his last jump shot falls. His real estate holdings stretch across California and New York. The empire is undeniable. But the ghost of Uncle Paul never fully left. In a league full of players who arrived as millionaires and departed broke, Kevin Durant did the opposite. He arrived humble, built quietly, and compounded relentlessly. The Uncle Paul era was not a phase to be embarrassed about. It was the blueprint. And the $500 million empire he is currently presiding over is the proof that boring, early, disciplined financial behavior is the most exciting story in professional sports. The king may wear the crown, but the ghost of Uncle Paul built the throne. And that's a wrap on part 2 of extremely rich black NBA players who live like they're poor. From Dwyane Wade firing his younger, reckless self to Kevin Durant channeling the ghost of Uncle Paul into a $500 million legacy, one truth runs through every single one of these stories. The most dangerous player in the room is not the one with the biggest contract. It is the one who still behaves like they don't have one. Which entry hit different for you this time around? Drop it in the comments below. And if this second part flipped your perspective a bit more, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay locked into Black Status, because this is where the real game is always off the court. Catch you in the next one.